Picture this. It's August 26, 1981, North Korea. Pilot Maury Rosenberg is flying at 3 times the speed of sound when his weapons officer's voice crackles through the headset.
Oh my God, the missile answered.
A surface-to-air missile is climbing toward them at 2,500 kilometers per hour. He has less than 50 seconds to impact. This is the SR-71 Blackbird, the fastest manned airplane ever built. In 24 years of operation, over 4,000 missiles were fired at it. Not a single one ever hit. So why did America throw it away? May 1st, 1960, Moscow. American pilot Francis Gary Powers is paraded in front of Soviet cameras. His top-secret U-2 spy plane sits in pieces behind him, shot down by a radar-guided missile 70,000 feet over Soviet territory. For the CIA, this is a nightmare scenario. The Soviets' technology is catching up faster than anyone predicted. America needs something the Soviets can't touch, a spy plane that can fly higher, faster, and somehow, impossibly, become invisible to radar. The order comes from President Eisenhower himself. Build the impossible. Late 1957, a classified file lands on the desk of aviation designer Kelly Johnson. Johnson is a legend. Since 1933, he's worked for Lockheed, designing some of America's most advanced aircraft. His latest creation, the U-2, is the plane that just got shot down. Johnson runs a small, secretive design team called the Skunk Works. No bureaucracy, just brilliant engineers who assume the impossible can be done, then figure out how. In a 1985 autobiography, Johnson would write, "We became the most successful advanced projects company in the world by hiring talented people, paying them top dollar, and motivating them into believing they could produce a Mach 3 airplane for a mere $10 million. The CIA gives Johnson a code name for the new spy plane, Project Archangel. The requirements are staggering. It must fly higher than 80,000 feet, nearly twice the altitude of commercial airliners, faster than 2,000 miles per hour, 3 times the speed of sound, and it must be nearly invisible to radar. No airplane has ever achieved even one of these requirements. Johnson needs all 3. Over 11 months, the Skunk Works team drafts 10 different designs. Each one is prefaced with the letter A for Archangel. Some designs reduce the radar signature, others achieve speed or altitude, but none can do all 3. By early 1959, the front-runner is the A-10. It's capable of flying higher than any U-2 and reaching Mach 3.2, 3 times the speed of sound. But there's a problem. Its shape makes it highly visible to radar. The Soviets would see it coming from miles away. March 1959. Kelly Johnson presents the A-10 to the CIA's head of Black Operations. He argues that speed and altitude are enough. Even if detected, the plane will be too fast for the Soviets to shoot down. The CIA isn't buying it. President Eisenhower wants stealth. Without it, Project Archangel is dead. On the brink of losing the contract, the Skunk Works team makes one last desperate push. They focus on the radar visibility problem, the one thing they haven't solved. Then 2 months later, one of the engineers has a breakthrough. He takes the existing A-10 design and adds elements from other Project Archangel prototypes, specifically the ones that reduced radar signature. The result is radical. The new design has a flatter underbelly and sharper, more angular lines. When radio waves hit this aircraft, instead of bouncing back to enemy radar receivers, they deflect harmlessly away along the flattened fuselage. The result? A 90% reduction in radar cross-section. On a radar screen, this airplane looks like a large bird. Kelly Johnson calls the CIA with the news. The new plane will fly 8 kilometers higher than the U-2 at 3 times the speed of sound, while presenting the radar profile of an eagle. On February 11, 1960, the CIA approves a $96 million contract, nearly $1 billion in today's money. Skunk Works will build 12 spy planes. The new designation, a 12. Project Archangel is officially airborne, but building this aircraft will require miracles. Kelly Johnson had a famous rule at Skunk Works. One miracle per program. Keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate things. The Blackbird would break that rule. It needed miracles everywhere. First problem, the airframe itself. At Mach 3, 3 times the speed of sound, friction from airflow alone would heat the plane's skin to over 600 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hotter than your kitchen oven at maximum temperature. Aluminum, the standard material for aircraft, loses its strength at 150 degrees. For a Mach 3 airplane, aluminum is barely breaking a sweat before it fails. There's only one material that can handle the heat and stay light enough for high-altitude flight: titanium. But here's the problem. In 1960, titanium is rare, and the world's leading producer is the Soviet Union, the very country this plane is designed to spy on. So the CIA sets up dummy companies, shell corporations with fake identities. They buy titanium from the Soviets without revealing who the real customer is. The irony is almost too perfect. The Russians are unknowingly supplying the metal for the spy plane that will watch their every move. But acquiring titanium is only half the battle. Actually working with it? That's another nightmare. Titanium is so hard it destroys standard machining equipment. Drills break, cutting tools shatter. The Skunk Works team has to invent entirely new manufacturing processes just to shape the metal. Then there's the heat expansion problem. Metal expands when it gets hot. At 600 degrees, the Blackbird's panels need to fit together perfectly, but on the ground, at normal temperatures, those same panels need to be loose enough to allow for expansion. This creates a unique problem with the fuel tanks. The Blackbird doesn't have internal fuel bladders or separate metal tanks. The skin of the airplane is the tank. The titanium panels themselves hold the fuel, which means on the ground, before the plane heats up, the fuel tanks leak. Maintenance crews would watch this $34 million aircraft sit on the tarmac with puddles of fuel forming underneath. It looked like a broken car leaking oil. But this isn't a design flaw. It's intentional. At Mach 3, when the panels heat up and expand, the gaps seal perfectly. The leaks stop. The plane works exactly as designed. The Blackbird is an airplane designed to be broken on the ground so it can be perfect in the air. Every miracle creates a new problem. Every problem requires a new miracle. And Kelly Johnson's team is running out of time. December 22nd, 1964, Palmdale, California. After years of development, millions of dollars, and countless engineering breakthroughs, the SR-71 Blackbird sits on the runway at Lockheed's. Bob Gilliland walks toward the aircraft. He's been handpicked by Kelly Johnson himself. Years later, Gilliland would recall that moment. Gilliland and Johnson agree not to push the plane too hard. The plan is simple: take off, leave the landing gear down, fly around, and land. If they can do that without anything breaking, it's a successful first flight. Then, just before climbing into the cockpit, Kelly Johnson looks at Gilliland and asks, "How do you feel about going supersonic on the first flight?" Gilliland doesn't hesitate. "I have great confidence in our escape system. It's okay with me." At 11:11 a.m., the SR-71 takes off. Gilliland climbs to 15,000 meters, over 3 kilometers higher than a commercial jetliner. Then he pushes the throttles forward. The Blackbird breaks the sound barrier on its maiden flight, reaching speeds of 1,000 miles per hour. Inside the cockpit, Gilliland is hyper-focused. The pilots have a saying about the Blackbird: it's a 3-second airplane. Every 3 seconds, you have to scan the instruments and make sure everything is working correctly. Look away longer than that, and you're in trouble. But everything holds together. Gilliland brings the plane down for landing. As he taxis back to the hangar, Kelly Johnson's voice crackles over the radio.
What's your fuel state?
"Excellent," Gilliland replies.
Well, how about a flyby?
So Gilliland goes around one more time and does a low pass over the runway. The SR-71 screams past the assembled engineers and technicians at hundreds of miles per hour. The first flight is a complete success. Project Archangel has delivered. America finally has the spy plane it desperately needs. But the test program is about to face tragedy. January 25th, 1966. 14 months after the successful first flight, the SR-71 test program is pushing the boundaries of performance. Engineers are constantly modifying the aircraft to squeeze out every bit of speed and altitude. Pilot Bill Weaver and reconnaissance specialist Jim Zwayer climb into their Blackbird for what should be a routine test flight. Weaver has over 4,000 flying hours under his belt. Zwayer is one of the best in the business. They take off just after 11 a.m. and head out on their programmed route. Everything is normal, routine. Then, at 24,000 meters, nearly 80,000 feet, flying at Mach 3.2, two Weaver banks into a turn. Without warning, one of the engines stalls. In his official accident report, Weaver would describe it as a very startling event. You could never prepare yourself for them. At over 2,000 miles per hour, the sudden loss of power on one side creates a catastrophic imbalance. The plane pitches violently into an impossibly steep climb. Weaver jams the stick full left, trying to regain control. Nothing happens. The plane doesn't respond. Inside 2 seconds, the aerodynamic forces become too much. The airframe is being pulled apart. The plane disintegrates around them. At Edwards Air Force Base, the SR-71 disappears from the tracking radar. Both crew members are presumed dead. Fellow test pilot Bob Gilliland is on the base when he hears the news. Bill Weaver's locker is near his. Inside are 2 cigars. Gilliland takes one of them thinking, if he's dead, I'll get him a whole box to replace it. But Bill Weaver isn't dead. He's free-falling from the edge of space. In a 1988 interview with the Society of Experimental Test Pilots, Weaver recounted those terrifying moments. I thought I was having a terrible dream, a nightmare. Then I realized I wasn't dreaming, so I must be dead. Then I realized I'm not dead. Somehow, I'm out of the airplane. When the plane came apart, Weaver was ejected from the disintegrating cockpit. Still in his seat, still strapped in, tumbling through the thin air at 80,000 feet, he could feel himself falling, hear the rush of wind, but he didn't know if his parachute was still attached. Then it opened. Looking around in the sky, Weaver spotted another parachute about a quarter mile away. Relief washed over him. They both made it out. Weaver landed in the New Mexico desert, 1,200 kilometers from Edwards Air Force Base. On the ground, he learned the devastating truth. Jim Zwayer hadn't survived. His neck had been broken the instant the plane disintegrated. He was already gone before his parachute opened. An investigation reveals what went wrong. The modifications made to optimize performance had made the aircraft less stable at extreme speeds. That instability led to a loss of control, which put the airframe under catastrophic strain. It's a sobering reminder. The Blackbird operates at the very edge of what's possible. One small miscalculation, and the forces involved are simply too great for any structure to withstand. Back at Edwards, the accident investigation chief receives an unexpected phone call. Yes, I will take a collect call from a Mr. Bill Weaver. Weaver had survived a fall from 80,000 feet. The investigation team can barely believe it. Bob Gilliland rushes to see his friend. He tells Weaver he owes him the best cigars he can find. Weaver would joke years later.
He said he was going to get me expensive replacements, and I haven't gotten them yet. That was in 1966.
The tragedy costs Jim Zwayer his life, but the lessons learned make the Blackbird safer. The Skunk Works team finds solutions to the stability problems. By 1967, the SR-71 is ready. All the technical issues have been resolved. The plane goes fully operational from Beale Air Force Base in California. Now it's time to put the Blackbird to work. March 1968, Vietnam. The war is at its peak. American Marines are under siege at Khe Sanh, surrounded by North Vietnamese forces. The enemy is being supplied through a secret logistics site deep in the jungle, but U.S. intelligence can't find it. The SR-71 gets the call, flying at 80,000 feet and Mach 3. The Blackbird crosses into Vietnamese airspace. Its high-resolution cameras and ground-mapping radar scan hundreds of square miles in minutes. The Blackbird locates the hidden supply area. B-52 bombers move in and destroy it. The siege at Khe Sanh is broken. It's the SR-71's first combat mission, and it proves what the Blackbird was built to do: gather intelligence that no other system can obtain. Over the next 2 decades, the SR-71 becomes America's premier reconnaissance system. It monitors the 1973 Arab-Israeli War. It tracks Soviet naval movements. It watches for signs of aggression in hotspots around the world. In a 1990 Air Force press release, the 9th Strategic Reconnaissance Wing reported, the SR-71 has provided critical intelligence during every major international crisis since 1968, serving as a sentinel for the free world. But the SR-71 is no longer invisible. In 1968, it's tracked by enemy radar for the first time. The stealth technology that made it nearly undetectable in 1960 is less effective against newer, more sophisticated radar systems, and surface-to-air missiles are getting better, faster, more accurate. It's only a matter of time before someone takes a shot. August 26, 1981. The Korean Peninsula, North Korea, under the communist regime of Kim Il-sung, is flexing its military muscles. There are fears of an invasion into the democratic South. The West desperately needs intelligence on North Korean military positions and capabilities. 17 years after its first flight, the Blackbird is still the world's best spy plane. Now it's tasked with flying reconnaissance missions over the DMZ, the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. Pilot Maury Rosenberg and reconnaissance specialist Ed McKim climb into their SR-71. They'll make multiple passes over the border, photographing North Korean military installations. In a declassified mission report, Rosenberg noted, most missions through the DMZ involve 3 to 4 passes, east to west, west to east. Even on operational flights, you never really relax. You're always watching everything. Yet the Blackbird carries equipment that warns the crew if enemy radar is tracking them. Rosenberg and McKim complete 2 passes without incident. The radar warning system stays quiet. They swing around for their final pass. Then Ed McKim's monitor lights up. Enemy radar is locked onto them. McKim is a veteran. He's seen this before. North Korea sometimes sends fake launch signals to rattle American flight crews. He stays calm. They're looking at us. They're painting us, McKim reports over the intercom. No problem. They do that all the time. Then the radar signal changes. It's simulating a missile launch. Another common intimidation tactic. Still nothing to worry about. But then McKim's equipment picks up something else. The missile is answering back. Oh my God, the missile answered! A real missile in the air, climbing toward them. Rosenberg's heart rate spikes. He scans the sky ahead. Then McKim's voice, higher now, more urgent. Live missile. Climbing on your right-hand side, a Soviet-made surface-to-air missile is racing through the sky at 2,500 kilometers per hour. At ground level, it's already supersonic, and it's still accelerating. Rosenberg spots it, a white contrail climbing rapidly through 40,000 feet. In the next few seconds, he can see it's still accelerating toward them. From launch to impact, they have less than 50 seconds.
Let's turn off track,
McKim says. Rosenberg banks the Blackbird to the left, away from North Korean airspace. He watches the missile climb, tracking it visually now. The window is impossibly narrow. The missile needs to calculate where the SR-71 will be, adjust its trajectory, and intercept, all in less than a minute. As Rosenberg turns, he keeps his eyes on the missile. It doesn't change course, it just explodes. In his official debriefing, Rosenberg estimated the missile exploded approximately 1 mile from the aircraft. At Mach 3, that's the equivalent of 2 seconds from impact. The North Koreans couldn't recalculate fast enough. By the time their missile reached the SR-71's altitude, the Blackbird was already somewhere else. Just as Kelly Johnson predicted back in 1959, even when detected, the Blackbird is simply too fast to catch. The Soviets even developed the MiG-25 Foxbat, a jet fighter specifically designed to intercept the SR-71. But it never succeeded, not once. Over 4,000 missiles were fired at the SR-71 Blackbird during its operational lifetime. Not a single one ever hit. 0 losses to enemy fire. An unmatched record in aviation history. A 1989 Air Force intelligence assessment concluded there is no known weapon system capable of successfully engaging an SR-71 at operational altitude and speed. By the late 1980s, the SR-71 is still the undisputed king of the skies, the fastest, the highest, the most capable reconnaissance aircraft ever built. But a new technology is emerging, one that doesn't need pilots, one that can stay over a target for hours instead of minutes, satellites, and they're about to change everything. Late 1980s. The SR-71 Blackbird is at the peak of its capabilities. 3 decades of operational experience have made it the most reliable reconnaissance platform in the world. But in Washington, a different conversation is happening. Reconnaissance satellites have matured. They're cheaper to operate and can't be shot down. On paper, they seem like the obvious future, but satellites follow predictable orbits. Adversaries know exactly when they're overhead and can hide sensitive operations during those windows. The SR-71 can launch on short notice and fly anywhere, anytime. It provides real-time intelligence that satellites simply cannot match. But flexibility is hard to quantify in a budget meeting. By 1989, the Berlin Wall is coming down. The Soviet Union is collapsing. The existential threat that created the Blackbird is fading. In a January 1990 Department of Defense budget memo, officials wrote, "With the maturation of satellite reconnaissance capabilities and constrained defense budgets, continuation of the SR-71 program cannot be justified." Budget analysts run the numbers. Satellites are the future. The SR-71 is a Cold War relic. In the halls of the Pentagon, a decision is made. March 6, 1990. The SR-71 Blackbird makes its final operational flight. The mission is simple. Fly from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C., and arrive in time for the plane to be formally donated to the Smithsonian Institution. But the crew decides to make this last flight one for the record books. They take off from Los Angeles and point the nose east. Then they push the throttles to maximum. The Blackbird crosses the entire continental United States in 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 20 seconds. Average speed, 2,124 miles per hour. It's a record that still stands today. No manned aircraft has ever crossed the country faster. As the Blackbird lands at Dulles International Airport, crowds gather to watch. Pilots who flew the plane, engineers who built it, enthusiasts who followed its career. In an op-ed published in Aviation Week and Space Technology, retired SR-71 pilot Richard Graham wrote, "Many of us believed the retirement of the Blackbird was premature. We were retiring the world's most capable reconnaissance platform at the very moment when regional conflicts were making real-time intelligence more important than ever." The SR-71 isn't being retired because it failed. It's being retired because accountants decided satellites were cheaper. The Blackbird never lost a plane to enemy fire, never failed a mission, never stopped pushing the boundaries of what was possible. The fastest airplane ever built is now a static display. August 2nd, 1990. Just 5 months after the SR-71 program is shut down, Iraqi forces under Saddam Hussein invade Kuwait. The Gulf War is about to begin. The United States needs immediate intelligence on Iraqi troop positions, weapons deployments, and defensive capabilities. Satellites provide some information, but they're limited by their orbital schedules. By the time a satellite passes over a target, the intelligence can be hours old. In a rapidly evolving combat situation, hours might as well be days. What the military really needs is a platform that can respond instantly. Something that can fly over enemy territory on demand and return with real-time intelligence. They need the SR-71, but the Blackbirds are already in museums or storage. The pilots have moved on to other assignments. The specialized ground crews have been disbanded. The program is gone. A 1991 Congressional Research Service report stated, "The retirement of the SR-71 has created a significant gap in tactical reconnaissance capabilities, particularly evident during Desert Shield operations where real-time intelligence of Iraqi positions was critically needed." The irony is almost painful. The SR-71 was retired to save money. But the intelligence gaps it left behind, those costs were never calculated. You can't put a price tag on the missions that were never flown, the intelligence that was never gathered, the options that commanders never had. Today, more than 3 decades after its final retirement, the SR-71 Blackbird remains the fastest air-breathing manned aircraft ever built. No plane has broken its records. No replacement has matched its capabilities. But perhaps the SR-71's greatest legacy isn't technological, it's human. The Blackbird proved what's possible when brilliant people are given an impossible challenge and the freedom to solve it. Kelly Johnson and his Skunk Works team didn't have supercomputers or advanced simulation software. They had slide rules, calculators, and rooms full of engineers who refused to accept that something couldn't be done. In his final interview before his death in 1990, Kelly Johnson reflected on the program. The SR-71 proved that if you give talented people a clear mission and the authority to accomplish it, there's no limit to what they can achieve. When you see an SR-71 in a museum today, it's easy to focus on the sleek lines, the impossibly futuristic design, the sheer presence of the machine. But the real story of the Blackbird isn't about titanium and specialized fuel. It's about the ingenuity, determination, and courage of the people who built it and flew it. The SR-71 Blackbird flew for 24 years. It completed thousands of missions. It outran thousands of missiles. And it never, not once, failed to come home. In its final mission summary report, the 9th Strategic Reconnaissance Wing wrote, "The SR-71 served 6 presidents and helped maintain peace during the most dangerous period in human history. It remains the fastest air-breathing manned aircraft ever built, a testament to American ingenuity and the indomitable spirit of those who dare to push beyond the possible." The dramatic rise and fall of the SR-71 Blackbird is a reminder that sometimes the most capable tools are retired not because they've failed, but because we've forgotten what makes them invaluable. The Blackbird may be grounded, but its legacy continues to inspire. And perhaps one day, when we need to push the boundaries again, we'll look back at the SR-71 and remember what's possible.